achieving some kind of conclusion about some sort of meaningful philosophical question. Was that vague enough for everyone to feel confused and also enlightened? I hope so. Okay, good. Thumbs up. Connor, that's a good sign. Okay, so I don't usually do this. I don't usually read anything that I write, and I usually don't read my own reflections. I usually don't read to classes or anything like that. So this is unique for me, and I hope that you can engage into this reflection that I've written, and afterwards we can together engage in some discussion and conversation on topics at hand. Okay? All right. So I will begin. I would like to begin my reflection and my lecture by describing my own intentions for philosophy and professorship. The philosophical quest is a journey towards existence. It is a search for our own existence in our conscious free thinking. We are connected to the universe in an intimate way. It is the vehicle for our life. My intention is to bring that quest to the immediate attention of all of my students. As conscious things, we are continually engaged in questions about meaning. What is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of my life? How am I to live? What is going to happen after I die? And what is the meaning of my death? These are some of the deeply personal questions that lie in the depths of all man's thought. They are the content of serious philosophical reflection, and often they are the cause for great inner conflict. Engaging these questions academically in the pursuit of truth can motivate us to search for objective reality. However, being unable to answer these questions in a satisfying way can cause us to experience a distrust of the universe and lead us to believe that we have no clear direction towards anything greater than our inevitable death. A former professor of mine told a group of introductory philosophy students, of which I was a part, that philosophy can be a very dangerous thing to study. He was intending to scare us. He did scare us. And he was right. The experience of alienation and the topic of death will be our focus tonight. Despite their depressing nature, I think it is important for all of us to acknowledge our own experiences that can relate. Rigorous honesty with ourselves is fundamental to a worthwhile philosophical journey. As Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living, meaning you should reflect upon your experiences as they are for the sake of your search for meaning and truth about existence and the universe. So let us recall those times we were confronted with a disunity between our ideas about reality and reality itself. Let us recall the times where we were faced with the chaotic universe preventing us from being the self that we believe we are. The chaos and the disunity we have experienced in the past is shown between what we consider our personal mission to propel ourselves through the world as a self-determining, accomplishing being, and the indifference of a cruel universe that does not care about our wishes. This is what is explored in Albert Camus' absurdist philosophy. Has anyone ever heard of Albert Camus? You have, as of maybe about 10 minutes ago, right? So you all have. The answer is yes. He is an early to mid-20th century French philosopher associated with existentialism and absurdism. In 1946, Camus wrote a book translated as The Stranger and an essay titled The Myth of Sisyphus. Both of these efforts were his attempt to explore what he termed the nakedness of man faced with the absurd. Philosophy Club will be delving into Camus' essay later, so I will take the opportunity to discuss The Stranger and absurdism. In Camus' novel, the hero, Rousseau, documents the week leading up to his arrest for a senseless murder and his upcoming execution for this crime. He is a young man who enjoys the pleasures of the body and lives moment by moment. He follows his whims, and they are only directed towards achieving whatever comes across as worthy of his present attention. He is not bothered by the past. He is not subject of much self-criticism. He is not beholden to any value system or social morality. I reread this novel this weekend to prepare for this lecture, and Rousseau's personality is so intriguing from start to finish. He begins the novel like a diary and speaks of a telegram he received about his mother's death. My mom died today, or maybe yesterday. I don't know. He is unaffected, detached, and in that sense, he is very real to himself. He does what he wants for himself. He does not speak unless he is spoken to. He does not fake emotions. He is intimately connected with his body and his vital experiences. He seems free in a way that most of us are not. He goes to his mother's funeral and is most discomforted by the heat and the waiting around, not her death. He had forgotten how old she was. He indulges in some coffee and cigarettes right next to her body. The day after the funeral, he goes to the beach with a girl he's sleeping with. He is not confused about his desire for her. He's very desirous of her. However, when she asks him if he loves her, he says no, and he's not conflicted about this in any way. He is very intriguing, and as a reader, you are drawn into his point of view, and you sympathize with him throughout the trial leading up to him being condemned to death. I think we engage in Rousseau's thought process because it is freeing for us by proximity. Until you realize, when he realizes in the final chapter of the novel, that he is going to die. He has been condemned to death by the judge who oversaw his trial. In the last chapter of the book, Camus gives us his absurdist philosophical assertions through Rousseau as the true absurdist hero in the moments when he is confronted with his death. Prior to his arrest, Rousseau is at a beach with his fiancée and his friends. His girlfriend had proposed, and he's accepted because he had no reason not to accept, not because marriage should mean anything to him or to her, of course. One of his friends at the beach with him had involved him in some dubious activity earlier that week and was being harassed because of it by a group of Arabs at the beach they were all visiting. Rousseau and his friend Raymond and another friend got into a fight with the Arabs and retreated away after Raymond was badly cut. Afterwards, Rousseau went back out for a walk on the beach with a revolver in his jacket. He walked right up to the Arabs. The sun was beating down on him, and he was beginning to feel its effects. Sweat was dripping into his eyes, and the sun was blurring his vision. He ended up shooting an Arab man who confronted him, and after the man fell to the ground, Rousseau stood over him and emptied the revolver into his body and killed him. You read the details of the story from Rousseau's perspective while he sits in prison, and you somewhat overlook the nature of this terribly violent and viciously cold-blooded murder to continue to engage his point of view, which is completely disinterested and detached from the morality of his action. It is sort of like, what does it matter? It happened the way it happened, it is a matter of fact, and it is in the past. Rousseau describes his discomforts in prison, first about women, then about smoking. Then he gets over both and starts sleeping well again. There is no sorrow, there is no remorseful reflection, there is no questioning, there is no being haunted, there is no analysis of the event. He only discusses his bodily awareness, eventual adjustment, and the annoyances he experiences with his lawyer and when he is subject to the heat. His callousness and his refusal to accept Christ's redemption are why he is condemned to death for his crime. Through all of this, you, the reader, are actually not disgusted by him. The whole time, he just seems like a regular guy. He's the true absurdist hero, and Camus was able to deliver this brilliantly. You might ask yourself, what does this have to do with death? And still, what is absurdism? To answer the second question first, Absurdism is the philosophical confrontation with the disunity between the systems of value that govern our emotional lives and a valueless universe that is indifferent to those beliefs of yours and will smite you out of existence. And the first question, what does this have to do with death? And the answer is everything. It is in the face of Meursault's death that his way of life is affirmed by the absurdist philosophy. In the last chapter, Meursault has a heated conversation with a chaplain. The chaplain says something like, he has talked with many men in Meursault's position before, and they have all turned to God. Meursault, of course, refuses to turn to God. He says he doesn't have much time left, and God and everything else the chaplain is talking about doesn't interest him much. But why does man grasp at God in the moments before his death? Is it because his whole life he believed his existence mattered? He believed his life mattered, and his experiences mattered, and his relationships mattered, and his accomplishments mattered. He likely tried to do well. He likely tried to be moral, even if he was a criminal. He likely abstained from indulgences that he believed would not serve his greater purpose. He believed he was free to direct his life well or towards meaningfulness, and that could be what made his life exceptional. And he believed that the potential to be exceptional was inherent to his human existence. And now he's going to die. And by die, the absurdist philosopher means end. You should think about that. Death as an end of your conscious life. You are annihilated from the universe. From the absurdist point of view, man grasps at God in moments before his death because it is his last chance to be exceptional and to achieve the ultimate meaning for his life and to propel his identity onward. Why is man so desperate for this? Maybe it is because he thinks his life was supposed to matter, and as far as he can tell, faced with death, it does not. Our inevitable, unpredictable, meaningless death is the greatest evidence for the absurdist that life is absurd, that our consciousness is cruel, and the universe is indifferent. We will die, and in that death, we will end. Throughout your life, I'm sure you can recall other evidences of absurdist philosophical worldview. Maybe anytime your bubble was burst, where your ideas about yourself and your actions or desires are confronted with the indifferent universe. When your efforts to achieve the purposes you believe you are naturally inclined towards prove themselves futile. When we are confronted with the futility of our own experiences, we are overcome with anxiety, alienation, and despair. We have discovered that the universe is hostile to the imaginations of our solitary minds, and this is far too much to bear. So what will we do? Will we lie? Will we invent? Will we ignore? Will we leap into anything that allows us to avoid the absurdity? In the final chapter, Meursault has many philosophical reflections on life and death and the meaning of it all. Should we take a page from his book? He recognizes that he must accept that he will die. He says, well, I'm going to die sooner than other people will, obviously, but everyone knows that